unfold. This happened when I was in middle school. Back then I was on the basketball team, so I often didn't get home until after 7 p.m. Because my house was in the opposite direction from everyone else's, I had to walk home alone. It didn't ever really bother me though. Well, not until that night. One late autumn evening, after another long day of practice, I was trudging down the mountain path as usual. The leaves were a deep crimson, the night air was crisp and biting, the sky was darkening faster now that it was almost winter. The moon hung in the sky ahead of me as I rounded a familiar curve in the road. Then something caught my eye, a white figure standing at the edge of the path. At first I couldn't make out what it was, but as I got closer, I realized it was a man. Unnaturally tall and thin, dressed in white. He was standing with his back to me, half submerged in the ditch that ran alongside of the road. A chill ran down my spine. What's he doing here? I thought, my heart beating fast. There was no other routes to take. I had to pass him to get home. I hesitated. I noticed something odd about him. His limbs were long, his arms hanging down almost to his knee, the white fabric of his clothes draped loosely over his really bony frame. He stood perfectly still, not moving an inch, as if frozen. Why was he stood there, not doing anything? It was cold out. I didn't understand it. I felt sick to my stomach, but I couldn't stand there forever. My mum got mad at me if I walked in the door when dinner was on the table, so I had to get a move on. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies inside me, and started to walk past him, my steps slow and cautious. 5 meters, 3 meters, 2 meters. He didn't move. My pulse was pounding in my ears, and it was weird because I could almost feel the weight of his presence bearing down on me. But as I got closer, I noticed something even more disturbing. His body seemed to bend slightly, like a tree in the wind, though there was no breeze. I forced myself to keep walking, until I was finally past him. I hurried away, half running, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. I didn't look back. I was glad it was over, but little did I know, it wasn't really over. The next day, it happened again, and the day after that. Each time, he was there in the same spot, standing in that strange, twisted position. His back was always to me, his limbs dangling unnaturally, his head bowed, as if in deep thought. By the third day, my fear had turned into something else, a nagging curiosity. He hadn't done anything to me, no sudden movements, no threats. He just stood there, eerily silent. But why? What was the purpose? On the 4th day, I decided to take a closer look. I knew it was a bad idea, but the curiosity gnawed at me, demanding answers. I approached, and my heart was pounding harder than ever. It was tough for me, since I was a high school student, but I always thought I was kind of brave. I used to go for every challenge when I played basketball. I didn't ever worry about getting injured, so I guess it was a little like that. I just went for it. I forced myself to glance at his face. I wish I hadn't. He slowly turned his head, the movement smooth and unnatural, as if his neck was made of rubber. His face was pale, almost ghostly, with dark, hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. And then he smiled, a wide, crooked smile that stretched his mouth far too wide. It honestly was like he was trying to mimic human expression, but didn't quite know how to. My blood ran cold. I turned and ran, sprinting as fast as I could, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the empty night. I didn't stop until I was safe inside my house, slamming the door shut behind me. The next time I had basketball practice, I dreaded going home, but I had no choice. Well, I could have asked my parents to pick me up, but I thought at the time that I would have to explain myself and maybe they would start babying me because I was scared to walk home alone. I just felt like I had to suck it up or be ridiculed. When I finally reached the spot where the man usually stood, he was gone, and relief washed over me in an awesome way. But it was quickly replaced by a creeping sense of dread. I had the sharp inclination that he was still in the area, as if he could be watching me from someplace nearby. Was he hiding, waiting for the right moment to strike? I should have asked my parents for a ride, and swallowed my pride. Despite the bad gut feeling I had, I needed to know more. I approached the ditch where he had been standing. My hands were trembling, I remember that clearly, as I peered into the shadows. Something caught my eye. Magazines, scattered across the ground. I picked one up, heart still racing at this point. The covers were strange, depicting muscular men in overly dramatic poses, their faces twisted into expressions of exaggerated masculinity. The titles were unfamiliar and bizarre: Rose Tribe, Sub, Samson. I felt a wave of nausea. The magazines were bizarre, but they didn't explain anything. If anything, they made the situation even more disturbing. I didn't know at the time, but they were, spicy men's magazines for men who like other men. I felt that they were deliberately left there for me to find, and that turns my stomach now I'm an adult. I dropped the magazines and stumbled back. Now the images on those magazines are still burned into my mind, and without another thought, I turned and bolted. I remember the sound of my footsteps again echoing as I ran. I didn't stop running until I was home. I never saw the man in white again, but the memory of that haunting smile that stayed with me ever since, a reminder of that strange, terrifying period of my life where the moon seemed full every night. Hi, Jay here. I almost didn't include this one, but I feel like it has a place in this collection. Just take it with a little pinch of shio. It's a cool little rumor, or urban legend. This story is about a strange and eerie experience that I had. Something that happened only once in my life, but has stayed with me ever since. When I was a kid, there was a small hill behind the elementary school that I attended. On that hill stood a shrine, well known in our local area. My friends and I often played there on our way home from school, usually engaging in games of hide and seek until the sun began to set. One particular day, as dusk fell and we gathered to head home, something caught our attention. Off to the side of the shrine's offering box, we noticed an old, traditional Japanese doll. A girl's doll, dressed in a kimono. We all huddled together, whispering things like, "That's creepy," trying to freak each other out. But I wanted to impress my friends and show them that I wasn't scared. So, without thinking, I picked up a stone and hurled it at the doll. To my surprise, my first throw hit its mark perfectly, right in the center of the doll's face, as if it was in slow motion. The doll's face cracked open, and the stone slipped inside, leaving a gaping hole where the face used to be. The sight of that dark, hollowed-out face made my heart skip a beat, made me shudder, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over us. We all screamed and bolted out of there as fast as we could. Being kids, by the time I got home, I'd already started to forget about the whole thing. I settled in and watched some TV, had dinner and went to bed as usual. My mum and I shared a room. We'd always sleep next to one another since it was just the two of us in our small house. I must have fallen asleep pretty quickly because the next thing I knew, I was being awakened by a soft, almost whispery voice.
Hey. Hey. Hey.
It was my mum's voice, or at least it sounded like it was hers. She was lying beside me. Turned away, but I figured she was trying to get my attention. Half awake, I mumbled, "What is it, Mum?" But she didn't answer. Instead, she kept whispering,
Hey. Hey. Hey.
without moving. A chill ran down my spine. Something about the way she kept whispering felt really off. I was starting to get scared. I reached out and shook her shoulder. A bit harder this time. "Mum, what is it?" She softly groaned, almost as if she was in pain, and then she rolled over to face me. At that exact moment, there was a loud, startling bang. A sound like something heavy crashing into her face. Bam! My mum's face, it changed. Her hair and the outline of her face was still the same, but her features caved in, just like that doll's face had earlier. The center of her face was gone, leaving a dark hole where it should have been. And from that hollow space, I heard a voice. This time not my mum's, but something else, saying,
What are you gonna do with this?
I didn't have time to process what was happening or what the words even meant. I blacked out. The terror was too much for my mind to handle. When I woke up the next morning, everything was back to normal. The sun was shining through the window, and I could hear the familiar sounds of my mum in the kitchen, making breakfast, just like any other day. I sat up, my heart still racing. I couldn't tell if what had happened was real or just some horrifying nightmare, but deep down, I had the feeling that the doll from the shrine had something to do with it, that it had come back, angry, and somehow invaded my dreams, or worse, my reality. Even now, when there's a full moon, I can't help but think about that night. The way the moonlight shone through the windows, casting long shadows across the room, the whispers in the dark, and that awful, hollow face. I haven't been back to the shrine since, and I don't think I ever will. There was this eerie experience I had one autumn night that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I think about it. It all started one night when I was out driving around with a friend. We didn't have a particular destination in mind, just cruising through the back roads of our prefecture, enjoying the cool night air. After a while, I suddenly felt the urgent need to use the bathroom, so we decided to stop at a nearby park. We pulled into the parking lot, and as I got out of the car, I glanced at my watch. It was around 3 a.m. That dead of night hour where the world feels eerily quiet. My friend, who's always been a bit jumpy, hesitated and asked,
Should we go somewhere else?
but I was too desperate to wait. There wasn't another restroom in sight, so despite my friend's protests, I dragged her along with me towards the park's restroom. The park was built on the ruins of an old castle and was usually bustling during the day, especially in spring when the Cherry Blossom Festival brought crowds of people, but at this hour, it was deserted. The park was dimly lit by a few streetlights, and the moon was almost full, making it bright enough to see without too much trouble. The combination of the streetlights and the moonlight made the park look almost serene. But there was a stillness in the air, like an uncomfortable pause. There was just something that made you feel a little apprehensive. After finishing up in the bathroom, I felt like stretching my legs a little bit. It had been a while since I last visited this park, so I suggested that we take a quick stroll around while it was quiet before heading back. My friend, who's not a fan of anything remotely spooky, was understandably reluctant. But knowing how much I love exploring places, especially at night, she begrudgingly agreed. I thought that it would be pretty cool to be in the ruins alone. Just us girls. It made me feel kind of brave. The park had this gravel path lined with cherry blossom trees, which were beautiful in the spring, but now, in the autumn, the trees looked bare and kind of depressed. The path led to a flower garden that was divided into 4 sections. In the middle of the garden there was a small pavilion, a simple structure with no walls, just a roof and a couple of benches underneath. As we walked closer to the garden, my friend suddenly stopped dead in her tracks. I turned around, wondering if she had tripped over something, but before I could ask, she pointed towards the pavilion, her voice trembling as she whispered,
There's something there. Look.
I squinted in the direction that she was pointing in, my eyes struggling to adjust to the shadows under the pavilion's roof. It took a moment, but then I saw it too. A dark, shadowy figure slumped on the bench. I'll admit it, my heart skipped a beat. My friend was practically shaking, but somehow seeing her so panicked helped me keep my cool. I kept staring at the figure, trying to make out what it was. It was too dark to see clearly, but something about the shape of it didn't feel right. After what felt like an eternity, though it was probably only a minute or two, I realized what it was. The shadowy figure wasn't a ghost or a cryptid or anything supernatural. It was just a homeless person, probably using the pavilion as a makeshift shelter for the night. I noticed a couple of bags and some old shoes tucked in under the bench, confirming my guess. I tried to calm my friend down. I whispered, "Let's go. It's just someone sleeping there. No need to freak out." We quickly backed away, careful not to make any noise, and we headed back the way we came. My friend, still shaken, kept asking,
What was that? Did you see that?
"It's just a homeless guy," I reassured her, "probably sleeping there for the night." My friend seemed a bit relieved, but I knew she was still on the edge. Honestly, at that hour, it was more concerning to run into a stranger in a deserted park than to see a ghost. We started talking about random stuff to lighten the mood as we made our way back along the gravel path. The park was quiet, the only sounds being our footsteps crunching on the gravel and our low voices. But after a few minutes, both of us suddenly stopped and turned around at the same time. We had heard something, a sound that wasn't our own. It was footsteps, but not the slow, steady kind. These sounded like someone was running, coming from somewhere behind us. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just our nerves playing tricks on us. But the sound was real and getting louder, like something or someone was coming towards us fast. My friend grabbed my hand. I knew she had heard it too. The sound wasn't just footsteps, it was almost like the quick, erratic rhythm of something with more than 2 legs. Like an animal maybe. But it didn't quite sound like a dog either. There was something unnatural about it. I tried to tell myself it was someone walking their dog late at night, but the closer the sound got, the more uneasy I felt. We kept walking, trying to act normal, but every few seconds, I'd glance over my shoulder. Each time I did, the footsteps would stop, and there'd be nothing there. No person, no dog, no animal, no sign of anything. Just the eerie, empty path behind us. By now we were walking faster, almost at a jog, heading straight for the car. But the footsteps didn't slow down. They seemed to be keeping pace with us, closing in with every step. Finally, just as it felt like the sound was right behind us, I spun around, pulling my friend behind me, ready to face whatever was there. But there was nothing. Just empty space in the stillness of the park. The footsteps had stopped as suddenly as they had started, disappearing into the silence of the night. My friend was freaking out, saying,
Something just passed right by me. I felt it. It brushed against my arm.
I felt it too. A cold shiver running down my left side, like something had walked right through me. I have no idea what that was. We didn't waste any more time. We bolted back to the car, not daring to look back again. Whatever it was, whether it was our imagination or something more, I wasn't about to stick around and find out. Even now, when I think about that night, I can't shake the feeling that something really was there, something that we couldn't see. And I'll tell you one thing, I'm not keen on going back to that park anytime soon. There was this weird rumor that floated around my high school. A creepy story that everyone seemed to know, but no one could ever confirm if it was true, or just one of those urban legends that teenagers pass around to spook each other. It's the kind of tale that sticks with you, lingering in the back of your mind, especially when there's a full moon, or when the night is suddenly filled with the crackle and boom of fireworks. Even now, years later, every time I hear fireworks, I can't help but think about it. Anyway, it goes like this.
Hey, was there supposed to be a festival today?
Kay asked, suddenly, his voice crackling through the phone. Kay and Jay were both in their final year of high school, struggling with the pressures of exams and the looming future that awaited them after graduation. Now, Jay had called Kay to ask for some help with some particularly tough spots in their study material. This was back in the days before the internet was widely available. So if you needed help with something, you just picked up your landline and called friends directly. It was summer vacation, a time when the air was filled with the sounds and smells of seasonal festivals in nearby towns. But in the quiet town where Jay and Kay lived, the annual festival was traditionally held at the end of August, not earlier. This is why Kay's question caught Jay off guard. No, I don't think there's a festival today. Why are you asking? Jay responded. His voice was tinged with confusion.
Well, I can hear fireworks going off. Don't you hear them? They're really loud.
Kay's voice sounded a little bit urgent and insistent. Jay paused, holding the phone tightly as he listened carefully. He even walked over to a window, opened it. But there was no fireworks, no booming explosions echoing through the air, just the quiet hum of a summer evening.
See, there it is again.
Kay insisted, his voice growing more excited and concerned at the same time. But despite pressing the phone even closer to his ear, Jay couldn't hear anything that resembled fireworks. The odd thing was that Kay lived less than a kilometer away from Jay. Less than half a mile. If Kay could hear fireworks, then logically, Jay should have been able to hear them too. But there was nothing. No sounds, no flashes in the sky, just silence.
They just went off again.
Kay said, his excitement now tinged with urgency. But Jay still heard nothing, not a single sound.
I'm gonna go check it out. See where this festival's happening. Maybe I can catch the fireworks.
Kay said suddenly, and with that, Kay's voice cut out. Jay could still hear the background hum of the phone line, but it was clear that Kay had left the receiver behind in his rush to investigate the source of those mysterious fireworks. Jay waited 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but Kay didn't come back to the phone. No matter how many times Jay called out, there was no answer from Kay, just that faint hum on the other end of the line. After nearly 20 minutes, Jay finally hung up the phone, figuring that he'd try to reach Kay later. He left Kay a message, just in case. Did you find the festival? But that message was never answered, and as it turned out, that was the last time that Jay ever heard from Kay. The next day, when Jay called Kay's house, he was shocked to find out that Kay had gone missing. The police were quickly involved, and Jay told them everything. How Kay had heard the fireworks and had gone out to check, but the strangest thing was, there hadn't been any festivals or fireworks displays anywhere nearby that night. The police just looked at Jay with puzzled expressions, unable to make sense of his story. The sound of fireworks that Kay had heard, Jay sometimes wondered if it was something he shouldn't have heard at all. It reminded him of the old Greek myth of the sirens, those enchanting yet deadly creatures whose songs would lure sailors to their doom on treacherous shores. Maybe, just maybe, Kay had been drawn in by those mysterious booms, leading him somewhere he was never meant to go, to a place where no one could ever find him. Years have passed since Kay's disappearance, but no trace of him has ever been found. Every summer, as the days grow longer and the nights are filled with warm breezes, Jay can't help think about Kay. And then, on those nights when the moon was at its fullest and brightest, just like the night he spoke to Kay, Jay thought he had heard it too, a distant boom, like fireworks, echoing through the night. Was there supposed to be a festival tonight? The question lingered in the air, unanswered. And now, every time I hear fireworks, I get a little nervous. Because who knows what's really out there, hiding behind that sound. It's the strangest thing, the kind of thing that makes you wonder if some stories, no matter how unbelievable, might just be true after all. It was May 22nd, 2022, when I had an eerie experience during a night of fishing that I just can't shake off. So, there I was, night fishing by the breakwaters. For those who might be unfamiliar, breakwaters are man-made coastal structures that are popular with anglers because they can be good places to fish. These structures are usually built parallel to the coast and are made of large boulders that fit closely together, creating holes that smaller fish can use as shelter. Usually this spot has a crowd, 4 or 5 people at least. But tonight, I was the only one there. Lucky me, I thought. No need to worry about my line drifting off into somebody else's space. I was in a great mood, thinking I had the place all to myself, and I could focus entirely on my fishing. It was a full moon that night, and the tide was high, and the conditions seemed perfect. But there was one problem. The moon was right in front of me, shining way too brightly. For some reason, That kind of brightness doesn't sit well with the fish. They tend to be less active, and I started thinking that maybe I wouldn't catch much. But then, out of nowhere, I began getting some strong bites on my line. Every time I reeled it in, though, there was nothing on the hook. Well, no fish. The bait was there, untouched. And as any seasoned angler would, I tried a couple of different baits, but nothing was working. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Weird, I muttered to myself. I kept casting my line. I was determined not to give up. Then something strange happened. As soon as my float sank into the water, a round object popped up right beside it. The sea was shimmering, with the reflection of the moon, so from my vantage point, the object was backlit and appeared pitch black. It was about the size of a bowling ball. Is that a boy? I wondered. But then, the object suddenly sank below the surface again. Could it be a porpoise? I thought, but then I quickly dismissed that thought. Porpoises don't stop like that. And if it were one, it would have surfaced to blow air. A seal, maybe? But then again, do seals even come this far south? Could it be a cormorant? It would have a long neck, surely, if that was the case. I concluded that it must have been some animal messing with my fishing gear. After that, the bites stopped completely. I had had a couple of nibbles, but now I was getting nothing, which left me feeling a bit irritated. I decided to take a break. I put the rod down, grabbed some sake from my cooler and my cup, and I sat there, sipping it, while the wind died down. The sea became so calm it looked like a mirror. I munched on some dried squid, finished my drink, and started to feel a bit more at ease. I took a deep breath and felt a little less tense. Sitting on the cooler, I twisted my body around, turning on my headlamp, and I opened my tackle box that I had placed to my right. I fumbled around until I found a small float that I figured would just be visible enough in the calm water. My plan was to try to detect even the tiniest bites. I started to stand up, to return to my original position, but as I turned back around, I caught sight of something. There, just before the edge of the breakwater, I saw a woman's face, staring at me. It felt like Mike Tyson had landed a punch, right in the center of my chest. The shock ran through my whole body. The woman had long, slightly wet hair. It was black, and it was parted in the middle, and she was glaring at me. Her eyes were piercing. She was about a meter away from me. I was so startled that I could almost feel my heart, ears, and nose thumping in sync, but I didn't scream. Immediately my thoughts turned to the paranormal, but then I realized that her face looked completely human, just like anyone you would pass on the street. I have no idea how long we stared at one another, but eventually I started to calm down a bit. Even though she was glaring, I noticed that she was actually quite pretty. I managed to choke out some words. What are you... It probably came out as gibberish. But she was just staring at me, silent as ever. I took a deep breath and I tried again and I said, What do you want? There was no reaction from her. The silence was unbearable. I decided I had to do something, so I forced myself to get back to fishing. I looked away from her, turned back to my original position, and with trembling hands, started changing my float. I didn't want to be intimidated, so that's why I didn't leave. You don't know me, but I'm a really stubborn person. I was fumbling so much then, not even sure I tied the float on properly in the end, but somehow I managed. Carefully avoiding shining my headlamp in her direction, I bent down to get some bait to put on the hook. I switched off my headlamp and cast my line again. I mean, I probably should have left right then and there, right? But I wouldn't be sharing my story if I did. At that point, there was no way that I could concentrate on detecting any bites, because I knew she was still there, just off to my right. But the background was a mess of complex shapes from the tetrapods, so I couldn't see her out of the corner of my eye after I turned the light off, after I turned my headlamp off. So therefore, my only option was to ignore her and just try and wait her out. Surely, there would be nothing in it for her to be hanging around by the sea watching me fish in the dark, right? A little while later, my float suddenly plunged under the water. I jerked the rod to set the hook, but once again nothing. I turned on my headlamp, grabbed the dangling line and shone the light towards my bait box. But the whole time I had my headlamp on, I was too distracted by the thoughts of that woman. I just couldn't help it after a while. I nervously let the beam of my headlight sweep towards where she had been. She was gone. But then I felt something behind me. I stiffened up. I heard 2 tiny, soft footsteps behind me. I forced myself to keep looking straight ahead, and then I hurriedly packed my gear up and moved to the end of the breakwater. In hindsight, I should have just gone home. But I'd been fishing in this spot for so many years that it never occurred to me to leave, even with everything going on. Also, the stubbornness. What did she want with me? What the hell was she? Was she some kind of crazy person? How could she just suddenly disappear? She was a meter away from me a moment ago, and then she's behind me? Is she a ghost? I was trying to stay calm, but my nerves were all over the place. I kept pulling out random items from my tackle box, putting them back, picking up my rod, setting it down, opening and closing the bait box, anything to distract myself. Finally, I managed to bait the hook, and I was about to cast my line again. As I moved my gaze from my hands to the sea, there she was. She was still there. Only the upper part of her face was visible from the edge of the breakwater, glaring at me. She was in the water, peering up at me with eyes that fathered no emotion, staring blankly like the creatures of the deep do. She's back, I immediately yelled, almost crying at this point. Please, just stop. Tears welled in my eye. I had this intense feeling of sadness. Still, the woman didn't react to anything I did. What do you want? Are you stuck here? In this world? I can't help you. I can't do anything for you. With a sniffle, I reached into my cooler, pulled out my sake, and hesitantly placed it in front of her. Would you like some sake? I asked. She continued to glare up at me, her expression unchanging. I slowly lowered my hand and placed the cup in front of her, jumping slightly when I did so. You want some dried squid too? I offered, holding out the open bag and placing it next to the sake. I don't have any spiritual powers. I've never seen anything like this before. Why are you here? Please, just go away. As I pleaded with her, tears streaming down my face, she slowly drifted away from the edge of the breakwater and slipped beneath the water. I remained frozen for a while, paralyzed with fear, before finally daring to stand up and peek over the edge of the breakwater. Nothing was there. The waves gently lapped against the breakwater, making soft, splashing sounds. I quickly grabbed the sake that I had left out in front of me, opened it, took a big gulp, but immediately started choking. There was no flavor. It was definitely alcohol, but it didn't taste like sake. I started chewing on the dried squid, but even that had no flavor. Frantic, I grabbed the other bottle of sake from my cooler and drank it down in one go, the sound of my slurping echoing in the night. After that, the fishing picked up. I started catching fish after fish, but my mind was elsewhere. I was just going through the motions like a zombie, silently working until it started to get brighter. The full moon was gone and the early rays of sunlight were here. The woman never appeared again after that night, but sometimes I still feel her presence. On those nights when I see ripples near my float, I know she's close. I always offer her some sake and some dried squid when that happens. And you know what? Those nights always end with a great catch. But I never did find out who or what she really was. I have my own idea of what happened to her. I guess you can put two and two together in this situation. Something might have happened to her out here on the breakwater. Maybe she is still out there somewhere at sea, lost, below. That breaks my heart. I say a little prayer for her, before and after I fish there. I have mixed feelings about it all, but I guess I'm kind of glad I experienced what I did.